try again.
Hi, and welcome back to Droning On, the podcast dedicated solely to the future of UAVs in America. And we're excited to be with you again to talk to you about everything UAV. So we're going to be here for a while covering some new stuff, some cool stuff we saw, some news, and eventually we're going to introduce our first guest. But before I get to that, I want to introduce my co-host, Charlie Sewell. Say hi, Charlie.
Hey, Graham. What's going on, buddy?
Not much. Good to have you here. And my name is Graham Hill. And again, we are the affiliated with the media company called Ideascape Media, an in-house production company. And so we are on this show to basically take our interest, which is producing video, and lead that into what is going on in the world right now, all around drones, which is a lot.
It's a lot of stuff going on. It's pretty exciting.
It's very exciting.
Very exciting. Actually, I was reading about something in the news today. Senator Feinstein actually had an up-close and personal encounter with a drone earlier.
I did see this. Apparently she was peeking out her window and something was peeking in back at her.
Yeah, it was a DJI Phantom. Somebody was flying it in the neighborhood. Seems it got up close and personal next to her window, and when she came out to peek at it, he must have been using FPV, and immediately it crashed.
What's the problem with FPV is you only can see straight ahead, so it sounded like he tried to do an evasive maneuver, didn't calculate that tree behind him, and
crash.
And it sounded like it made Feinstein happy to see that crash, because nobody wants to go to the John and look up and see a drone hovering there.
That's one of the other uses for drones, peeping toms. If you're listening, there's an option for you.
Exactly. So also, if you haven't seen it yet, kind of on the cool front, which we always like to cover, is the Hawaii surf video, which I think, let me see if I can find it here. It just came out yesterday, actually. At least it did on thenextweb.com. This was by aerial photographer Eric Sturman in Hawaii, and again, another DJI Phantom quadcopter, basically just hanging out over the Bonsai pipeline in Oahu, and one of the cooler videos I've ever seen.
Really beautiful. Just watching surfers go through, tons of guys lined up to take a few runs on it, and really amazing. You get some really cool shots. We'll attach the link there at the bottom of the podcast so you guys can check it out.
And all GoPro and DJI Phantom. So again, for most people, that this isn't a very achievable flight. We're talking under $1,000. This would have been achievable, and obviously then some editing software to put in some cool music and do a little color grade. But really cool stuff. So definitely check that out. And
so, what do you think the advancements in the GoPro 3 Plus? What do you think they're going to do? Do you think they're going to change kind of the fisheye that you see a lot on some of these videos, or what do you think the advances are?
I think there is definitely a market for people, or I should say companies, designing more intricate lens kits, because now that these semiconductors, for instance, I think the company is called Ambarella, which I became interested in a couple of years ago, actually the beginning of last year, because it was an intriguing stock, and they're really the ones that are processing this video down to such a small size chip. And their stock price has shown an amazing improvement as a result, and I'm an idiot for selling too early. But I think that the technology it's just a game changer, and it's truly limitless. I see a full suite of lens kits coming online, and I also see the Phantom and these drones even coming more ready to serve GoPro. I almost see GoPro perhaps becoming a manufacturer of aerial capable drones.
Interesting.
So you never know. I mean, it's so early, but like anything that we've seen, technology based, it starts to fusing together over time.
Absolutely.
So
absolutely. That's kind of why Google's taking over. It's like every little facet.
Right. Exactly. So we're gonna talk to, as I mentioned before, Eddie Codel today. Codel. And I said it wrong again. He already corrected me once on the call. and we had a chance to interview him. Now, if you haven't had a chance, check out on YouTube. Just type in Burning Man Festival by drone, and you're going to come across one of the cooler videos up there on par with this Hawaii surf video that we mentioned, all from the air. And he's going to talk about all the logistics of what it was required legally, and sort of the community around Burning Man Festival. Lots of cool things covered in this interview. So let's play some audio on the interview.
Well, the drones are a hobby of mine. I mean, I don't actually do it as a business. And I got into it about 6 months ago or so. Saw some videos some friends had done with their drones, and finally just kind of bit the bullet and sort of went down the rabbit hole, getting a DJI Phantom as my sort of foray into this world. I've been working sort of in that world off and on since 2000, when I was working for a startup that created software for doing live streaming reliably, scalably. And then that company got acquired and then died, and I kind of was on hiatus for a while. Got back in the video in 2005, and then sort of reignited my live streaming chops in like 2008 or so, and started doing some work with Ustream. Got hired on staff at Ustream for a while, running their production services, and that ended, and then went off on my own and been doing it as an independent consultant since 2010.
So obviously a knowledgeable guy, but I think you and I both know why we brought him on the show, which was to talk Burning Man.
Absolutely.
So we got into the Burning Man section of the interview in this next part.
Sure, yeah, Burning Man was awesome. I mean, I've been going to Burning Man for a while, so this wasn't my first time out or anything. I kind of wasn't even planning on going this year, but I sort of decided at the last minute that I would go. And, leading up to that, I had thought, I was gearing up to bring the Phantom out to do some aerial cinematography. And, it was all very experimental. I really had no agenda or plans or whatever, just other than to go out and capture as much as I could and, stitch together some videos. And so it all kind of came together. I got the Phantom, I got a gimbal, got the GoPro, and, learned how to fly it and all that. And then, was able to make it work.
So apparently a little bit more than just showing up with his DJI Phantom and putting in the air went into flying at the Burning Man Festival.
Definitely. And we were curious about a bunch of things with him, whether his was the only UAV out there, and really if they had any rules and regulations going on at Burning Man. Here's the next little clip.
So it's interesting. There are actually a lot of UAV enthusiasts in the Burning Man community, and they came together, or I should say a bunch of people came together at a summit here in San Francisco earlier in last year, that is, to talk about UAVs and the integration into sort of the Burning Man airspace, as it were. And so there was just some general guidelines that came out of that in terms of what to do and how to sort of use it. And most of it was based on the AMA guidelines. With some specific exceptions that were relevant to Burning Man, such as no flying around the man on the last day because they're putting a bunch of fireworks in him, and they don't want to have any errant radio frequencies that might set off some unfortunate early explosives. And then the only other thing was just don't fly over crowded crowds and make sure you stay in control. And the other big thing was don't fly over the temple. Which is a big art installation out there that has a lot of meaning to people, and it's kind of a quiet space to sort of recollect. So it's kind of annoying to be buzzing this sort of like this kind of spiritual quiet space. Right. So that was really the only two rules, and I thought that was totally perfectly reasonable, and so I had no problems at all. Well, the one thing I did have to do is there's a media check-in place. So if you're any kind of media at all and you're wanting to cover Burning Man, you have to go in there and sort of get registered and get a media pass if you have a camera. And so because this is the first year that they were dealing with drones, they required anybody who is flying a drone that has a camera on it to register the drone at Media Mecca. So I did do that, and then I kind of found out a little bit more about sort of what they were doing and how they were getting it going. But I had known about the rules and the summit prior to getting out there, so I wasn't going in blind at all.
So for anybody looking to head out to Burning Man, I think these are great guidelines from somebody that has been out there a number of times and has gotten to fly a little bit.
And I think it's interesting too that not just that there's actually a whole community around that. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if there's a lot of other events that have UAV communities around them.
Right. This kind of segues well into the AMA piece that Eddie was talking about a little bit. AMA is the Academy for Model Aeronautics. They've been working a little bit with the FAA with trying to come up with some guidelines or rules as far as use of models, and then the drones are coming into that as well. So we spoke about that a little bit, and we're gonna give you a little piece of that conversation.
And we touched a little bit too on is it Brendan Schulman?
Schulman, yeah.
So he is a New York attorney who is apparently turning his practice into almost completely based around drone law, which is very interesting. So he touches on that as well a little bit in this next piece.
So it was interesting because he's sort of the first one that the FAA has actually levied a fine against, and there was a presentation at that conference where his lawyer, who happens to be a UAV fixed wing flyer for many years, is defending him, and kind of got up on stage and sort of talked about sort of the status of where he thinks things are at. And actually, and if you guys get a chance, definitely follow him on Twitter. He's one of probably the most interesting individuals in the drones, sort of in the world of drones right now, in terms of policy and specifics of how it's being integrated with the FAA. So he's Drone Laws on Twitter, and a guy named Brendan.
Perfect.
Yeah, but he so it was kind of cool to hear sort of his perspective on all that, and his basic kind of, at least on in this particular case, was really that the FAA doesn't really have the authority to enforce airspace that's under 400 feet at this point, because they didn't do due process. There was no due process in coming up with those guidelines, which are just guidelines in his estimation, at least. Right. So yeah, we'll wait and see if that flows that way. But it's interesting. It's interesting to see that not everything is as clear cut as some people might believe.
So I think this is the sort of the $1 million question that everyone's waiting to have answered right now. What are these laws going to look like for businesses like ours in the near future?
Absolutely. I mean, what can you do with a drone where it's legal right now? Anything you do commercially, the FAA can shut you down because they only want it for personal use. I think this is really important. If you get a chance, start following this guy on Twitter. I think he's talking a little bit more. We'll try and get him on the show here eventually. But this can really play a big part as far as, can you use this for your own company? Even can a farmer use it? So this is going to play a big part in where businesses can go and what they can do.
And he really sounds like a leader in the industry too. I mean, you think of the fact that he's going to turn his whole practice into a drone-based legal practice. I mean, there probably are only a handful of these practices in the entire country. So to communicate with somebody like this is sort of getting in from the very ground floor of all the legal issues, and probably someone that you're going to want to know if you're thinking seriously about putting larger and larger drones in the air commercially.
Or if you crash your drone into a car or a house or someone, it's a good person to call.
Or if it happens to make its way into Feinstein's window, give him a call. So yeah, in our next line of questioning, we actually did talk a little bit about some of those legal issues, not seriously, but we joked around a little bit with Eddie about some of our flight mishaps that we have in common.
I started with a Phantom, but I've crashed it numerous times. I've had one crash in my back before, but luckily I have not just had any. I walked away totally fine. So I had a pretty bad crash a few months ago. I was in Iceland actually, and I hit a side of a building without, it was a complete stupid rookie mistake. I really didn't know how far up I was, and I ended up hitting a building accidentally, and it came crashing down on the ground. Thankfully, there was nobody around. I did sort of due diligence on that. But it was pretty much, there's no way I could fly it. The airframe was completely broken. One of the motors was shot. The speed controller shot. So when I got back home, the nice thing about DJI is all those parts are available. So I just ordered all the parts, got a new airframe, transferred all the good parts out of the old one, soldered everything back together. Yeah, it's working great. So
So the great thing on these crashes, they're always funny, and when you have them on video, they're really enjoyable. I know, Graham, that you've had a little bit of experience in this realm.
Yeah, I've become one of the leading industry leaders in crashes on the DJI 450. I've managed to put it back together every single time. However, I would say at this point I've done some damage to a couple motors, but yeah, sort of right out of the box, I think and if anyone is buying one of these, make sure that you fly it in GPS hold mode. I've said that before. I have to say it again because it's very easy to forget and just put it into manual, and now you have about 3 or 4 times the responsiveness with your sticks. And so now any turn that you're used to making in GPS hold mode is 4 times that sort of correction. So I've done some pretty catastrophic crashes into in farm fields. Managed to flip it completely upside down and snap off the GPS stick that holds the NASA on top of it. Snapped numerous arms.
Well, my favorite one, I got a text message the other day with a picture of a gashed open hand that looked a little bit painful.
Yeah, that was an in-house crash. So if you're doing calibrating in your house, I would take the propeller blades off. If you can't do that, then I would own a garage space or something. And these things will not take off on you, I should say. Basically, what had happened is I had miscalibrated
So
after
don't be dumb. You can do it in your house. Just don't
Yeah,
be
true.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. No, but basically, I had miscalibrated the throttle and had reversed it on accident. And if you fly these, you know that the way to arm the blades is to pull both of the sticks down and to the outside, and it will idle the blades before you take off. What had happened instead was I had reversed that, and so I realized I'd reversed it, but then instinctively after I'd armed the blades, I pulled the throttle all the way down to the what I thought was the off position, which was actually the 100% on position, and I did it in my office. But quick reflexes saved my computer, so.
That's solid. And 6 stitches later, you're almost healed again.
Exactly.
Which
and
is great.
That's not going to stop us from adding to our fleet of drones as we move forward. And
I guess this is a great segue. We were talking to Eddie a little bit about a company out of California called Game of Drones. They're actually making an indestructible drone where you can throw it into a wall, you can shoot it with a shotgun, and it doesn't go anywhere. It's a self build, but if you're looking for something and you know you're going to crash a lot, or you're looking to have a little air war with a friend, it's a good company to look into.
So actually, it's funny. I know those guys.
Oh, cool.
You're probably the Game of Drones.
Yeah, there you go. That's it. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a couple guys here, actually, in the Bay Area, that are making, what they're calling indestructible airframes.
Right.
They're made out of the same material that gun holsters are made from. I don't know what that's called, but apparently it's a common material that's really rugged. And you may have seen the video where they're actually trying to shoot it out of the sky with a shotgun.
And throwing it against a wall and stomping on it and trying to do all crazy things to it.
Totally, yeah. So they have a Kickstarter now where they're actually selling those airframes. They're gonna get them made and sold. So you can buy just I think just the airframe on its own for like about $150, and then
wow.
I mean, I saw, I talked to the guys. I saw them flying them at a meetup here, and actually on Monday, Make Magazine is doing a meetup on Sebastopol, which is just north here of San Francisco here, where they're based. Where O'Reilly's based, and so there is basically a free for all drone flyathon, and those guys are going to be there with their combat drones. But yeah, it's pretty interesting because it's definitely they're going for the indestructible
Right.
fighting drones, and yeah, it's fun stuff.
So cool stuff indeed. So we transition back to asking Eddie a little bit more about what he thought about adding to his fleet of drones in the future.
Right now I'm kind of just doing this as a hobbyist to sort of see where, just kind of getting my chops and really understanding kind of the whole ecosystem around, what UAVs and drones. And definitely, I mean, I'm interested in building other ones and acquiring other ones. I've actually got a 3D robotics Iris on order, so I'm really excited to see what one can do with a true drone, with autonomous control and the waypoints.
Really good. Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, the but in terms of like the future in business, I mean, certainly when the FAA rules are get carved out and there's a commercial sort of process, I would certainly love to go down that road and get certified or do whatever's needed to become commercially viable. But until then, I'm just gonna keep doing it as a hobby and just kind of getting better at it and just sort of position myself as at least somebody who kind of understands this world more than others do. And then I've had a lot of people come to me and just asking for advice and what to get or what
Sure.
what to look out for and that sort of thing. And just even that alone is pretty exciting.
So I thought it was really cool that he mentioned the 3D robotics drone, which I have some background in GIS. Is really designed for doing mapping and surveying and 3D modeling and stuff like that. Sounds like a really cool product to have. Something we'd probably like to have at some point.
Absolutely. It seems like it's an autonomous kind of flyer also.
Right, it just goes around, scans, and sends back, or captures all that data that you can then downlink into your computer. So, so we got back into sort of more the cool genre and asked him, Eddie, a few questions about what he thought his coolest videos were. Right on. Well, I noticed too on your main page you have sort of a stream of your top 10 drone videos of the year. Which video outside of course your own video, which is fantastic? What's your favorite drone video on YouTube of the past year that you've ever seen? I guess I could say.
Yeah, it's really hard to pick one because there's so many good ones. But I have to say, I think the Team Black Sheep one where they're flying around the Costa Concordia cruise ship, which is the big
Yeah.
cruise ship that got grounded, and I get unfortunately 32 people I think died from it. These guys, those guys are kind of they're renegades for sure, and they went out and flew a couple of their discoveries around the Costa Concordia at sunset, and it's just super beautiful, and they're just balls out landing on it and stuff. I'd say it's a toss up between that, and then there's one I just saw recently, which was I think on the north side of Oahu, a surf video.
Yeah, I just saw that one. It's
Oh man, that's
fantastic.
fantastic.
Yeah. So always new cool video content coming out that we're trying to keep our eyes on. But and what we wanted to really talk to Eddie about is what he specializes in is live streaming, and one of the things we're interested in, especially because my co-host here Charlie was a professional golfer, is talking about live streaming of sporting events.
Right, the live streaming could be really cool. You might need a little more action-based sport other than golf. But we've been wondering about, you get into a football game, being able to do a flyover, and how long you can keep a drone up in the air, really get that high-quality video, and then live stream it to an audience. But this is what he has to say.
Yeah, I mean, so I think one thing that you were sort of maybe getting to with my live stream background was, the ability to do some live streaming from drones. And
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I do think that is a thing that could happen. I certainly would love to marry my interests of live streaming with aerial cinematography. While I mean, because it's kind of already happening with FPV flying, right? You're already sending an analog video signal back to a base station,
Right.
so it's kind of already possible. One thing I was going to say when I was at the Dark conference in New York last year, there was a dude I met, this kid who was a researcher, PhD student, or whatever, in Switzerland, who had developed a tethered drone. So basically, he took, I don't know, I'm not sure what flight controller he used, but he basically took a basic a drone that has GPS, stripped out the GPS and kind of brought it. I think he probably used something with like an RG-copter, and then just stripped it down to its bare minimum and put a tethered leash on it. So what it does is you can kind of fly it around like a pet. And while that seems like a novel, weird thing, think of it this way. I mean, if you have a leash and it's just kind of flying above you and it's attached to the leash, that leash could be a power source. So ostensibly,
Oh,
you
yeah.
could have a quad, UAV, drone, whatever you want to call it, flying above
Interesting.
you for indefinitely. And then you stick a camera on that, which is what he had done. Then bam, all of a sudden you've got an aerial shot that you can keep going with, or that you can use.
Have you thought of the logistics of taking like of multiple drones and then feeding them in? Like, what would that look like if you wanted to feed those into a in the case of filming like a live event from the air?
Right.
how would something like that work?
Yeah, well, it's definitely doable. I mean, the big issue is just going to be wireless spectrum. So it's certainly not impossible to have, multiple wireless video feeds, being sent. There's plenty of spectrum for that to be able to do that even locally. Even on the FCC Part 15 stuff. So it's totally doable. And then there's stuff that's outside of that range that is there RF specific stuff that is used professionally. So just on the ground, there are like RF transmitters you can stick on a pro camera and then have a receiver, and then you can get pure HD, uninterrupted, very pretty much no signal loss kind of stuff. And those are on frequencies that are regulated. But there's plenty. You could, if you're at a football game or whatever, you can certainly have 6 or 8 or 10 of those aloft.